So what rights do parents and guardians have under Section 504? This is a question I'm often asked. Oh, okay, how does the parent fit into this whole thing? Well, number one is you must inform your parent all the time. You have to keep them informed. You just cannot refer the student and keep the parent out of the loop of what's going on. So there is a parent prior written notice that I've included in your handout, which I will go into some detail in a little bit. So we must provide notification. The information needed to appeal any such decision, if the parent is not satisfied, they have the right to appeal any of these decisions. They also have the right to examine any of the relevant educational records of the student. So it's sort of open book, and they are also part of the decision-making process. Okay? So where do we tap into the, where do we find the records for students for 504 services? We look at health records. We talk to the doctors. We also look at standardized test scores. We look at the class test scores to see if there are any significant issues with underachievement. We also look at informal checklists, behavior rating scales, if they were done in the past. Report cards, great information, looking at progress, looking at academic progress through the curriculum. Also, if you have the opportunity, you could interview the parents, or you could interview past teachers, even go to the extent of performing classroom observations to see how the student interacts with other members in the class, to see what are the limitations and what are the impacts and what are the major life activities in here. So if you are ever serving on a 504 team, you will be asked to give a report on what you think is going on. And you could use any one of these areas here to provide you that information. Some other areas you can also look at, it's also important to look at the work sample. Yeah. For example, somebody might temporarily lose ability to write. Take a look at the writing sample. Someone might have significant behavior problem. Look at the number of ODRs, the number of office discipline referrals. The other issue is that we need to find out is, were there any special education testing done? Can we use any of those results if the student is not eligible for special ed? And of course, every student has a record, and this record follows them. And the cumulative folder will give you a lots of information to help you with that. The next thing I want you to do is just go ahead and read that to yourself. What is a general program modification? Yes. And again, this is just reinforcing what I said before. It has to be reasonable. There must not be any undue burden. And it is compensating some type of limitation due to a mental or physical impairment. There you go. You see that word again. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to talk to you specifically about strategies. Strategies that you can implement and change and let this be part of a 504 plan. Sometimes I'm asked the question, how do you write a 504 plan? A 504 plan is, I like to think of it as a mini IEP. A mini IEP, a mini individualized education plan. It's or an abbreviated IEP. You'll have the student's name, date, reason for referral, strengths, challenges, summary of evaluation results, recommendation by team. Very simple. Okay? And then you're going to look at the three-pronged criteria. Yes, is this affecting a major life activity? Check, check, check. We all sign, and we can go ahead with the services. We do have a phone question coming in, and we will take your question right now. Thank you for calling in.
Hi, I wondered if how HIPAA enters into the situation if you had someone with some type of a physical disability with a 504. How do you handle that, informing the people around, such as your custodians and cafeteria workers?
Okay, so your question is your 504 plan notification of everybody so that we can network and have everybody involved. Well, basically what I have done in the past is I have sent out a notification. I've even brought the custodians and people to the training to come in and ask questions and answers about specifically what the disability is, what the limitations are, what to expect, and this is the plan we're going to put in place if this should happen. So I think it's a lot of preparation, it's a lot of in-service, it's a lot of talking, it's a lot of networking and small group work. But you must have this written. It has to be, and there should be an action plan. And I went to the extent of even having the custodian sign off and saying, this is what I'm going to do, and so that you've been informed on what to do, so they have full understanding of what the disability is. So that's what I would recommend. And I'll only do that if the custodian is going to be having lots of contact with the student.
Okay. So like if you're head custodian, but if you had like night custodians, you wouldn't worry about informing them?
I would inform anyone that would have contact with the student during a school day.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for asking a question, and feel free, East, West, Middle Tennessee, we appreciate your questions. So call in at any time, and I'd be happy to provide you with and shed some light on 504, and keep those questions coming in. All right, moving right along. So I was talking about the 504 plan, and I was telling you what it should look like. It's just an abbreviated IEP. So, and in the 504 plan, we're also going to include what are some goals, what are some objectives, who's going to provide it, which person is going to be responsible, what are the resources, what are the materials, what will we need to do this, what date would this be initiated, how are we going to monitor this plan, who's monitoring the plan, and what do we do after the 504 goals have been met. How do we exit a student? And there should be an exit form, by the way, that you would sign off again and meet as a team and sign off and continue programming for other students. Okay? Here are some examples of strategies that I have used in the past when it comes to different disabilities and issues. Let's talk first about your environment. Your classroom environment is so important because this is where your students spend about 80% of their time during the school day is in your classroom or classrooms in the building. Just by arranging your classroom and making it more conducive, just by moving your desks, allowing more space can be wonderful. Just by reducing the distraction in your room for a student with ADD, ADHD would be can be very helpful and beneficial. Just by having a student seated in front who's on a behavior management plan can also help. So you need to look at the environment. What can I do to change the environment or adapt the environment or to accommodate this particular student's learning needs? Okay? How do I adapt non-academic times for someone who has a significant physical mobility issue during lunch, during recess, during physical education? How do I do this? How do I do this without isolating the student from these activities? And that is something that you should gravitate towards and for your team to look forward in planning, okay? The next piece we're gonna look at are, one of the issues is organizational strategies. Usually that's one of the big ones. It's one that gets them into trouble a lot, is that especially a student who has ADD, ADHD, we need to model, we need to reinforce. We can also use color coding. We can actually write out the homework assignments, sometimes provide them guided notes, sometimes tailor your homework so that you can use the student's strengths. Let me give you an example of how you could modify or accommodate a student who has ADD, ADHD. Dorian, would you pass me my ADHD sample book? And I'm going to share this. Thank you, Dorian. Okay, this is a must. This is an intervention I use for a student who identified as having ADD or ADHD, attention deficit disorder, or an attention deficit disorder with hyperactivity. It's a very simple 3-ring binder. It might be simple to you, but as you know, children with ADD, ADHD, they're messy, disorganized, and they can't find their stuff, and gets them into trouble. And what I've done is I've created a very simple 3-ring binder, and in this 3-ring binder you will notice I also have paper clips. These paper clips are color coded as well. We have yellow, red, green, and white. Each paperclip represents some different type of subject. So whenever I'm doing math, maybe I have all of my math work with a yellow paperclip. If I'm doing science, it's going to be a red paperclip. All of my test items, probably my green paperclip. Okay, then I also section off my book. And in my book, I have tabs. So my student who has the ADD, ADHD issue, because he have very poor organization, can't keep all of their stuff in one place. And I will have the first tab with my first subject. At the beginning also, at the beginning, I'm going to have a schedule here, a schedule of activities, what they're going to do in the first period, the second period, the first hour, the second hour. Here I have a pocket folder for anything that you could put in here so that they don't lose their stuff, okay? And I've also sectioned it off. So, and something else you see here, I've purposefully put a red, I've got a blue, and a green. So I've got it all color-coded and color matched. In addition to that, one of these file folders, what I also do for my student with an attention deficit disorder is that I have a behavior chart here. If you can imagine a behavior chart, it's a graph, and they would graph their behavior in here. And on a daily basis or on a weekly basis, they take some data points and they're going to work on self-regulation, things like time on task. Because we know if we spend more time on task, your prediction on achievement is going to be higher and your success rate is going to be higher. So this is a very simple notebook that I just brought to show you that you could do. Does this cost you a lot of money? Probably not. Just a lot of time to rethink this. And you could have all kinds of stuff in here to organize. And you can, you know, I know you have great creativity and innovation, and I trust that you'll be able to come up with something even better than that. But this is just a generic one. And it should be a standard issue for all of your students who have ADD, ADHD, and you could write this into your 504 plan and say something like we will make a 3-ring binder, a color-coded 3-ring binder. Student will have this in their possession. It will be checked. It'll be passed around from teacher to teacher. Parents will sign off on once a week and make any comments if possible. Something as simple as this. Okay, and that can be part of your 504 plan. Okay.